I want to say up front that I've gone back and forth on whether to write this down. Not because I'm scared anyone will laugh at me. I'm scared someone won't. I worked the overnight shift at a regional fulfillment center for a little over 2 years. If you've never worked a warehouse night shift, I'll save you the mystery. It's not interesting. You scan totes. You walk 12 to 15 miles a night on concrete. You drink bad coffee out of a machine that's been broken since before you started, and you watch the clock. Do the thing where it moves slower the closer it gets to your break. The most dramatic thing that happens in a normal week is somebody's forklift clips a shelf and a case of protein powder explodes across the floor. I'm telling you this so you understand. Nothing about that place should have been capable of what happened. It was too boring. That's what I keep coming back to. The boredom is what makes it worse. Every employee had a badge. Photo ID, barcode on the back, and an RFID chip that logged you in and out of the building through the turnstiles at the employee entrance. It was also how you clocked in and out for pay. You'd badge the turnstile and badge a secondary reader by the break room, and the system would timestamp both. Standard stuff. Nobody thought about it. You badged in, you badged out, you went home. About 14 months in, payroll flagged my hours for the week of October the 6th. I'd been paid for 81 hours in a 7-day period. I worked 4 10-hour shifts. Even with overtime, that number didn't math out, and I told them so. The woman in HR, I'll call her Denise. She was fine. This isn't about her, pulled my badge log to sort it out. She turned the monitor toward me so I could see it myself. Tuesday, October 7th. Clock in, 10:58 p.m. Clock out, 6:04 a.m. the next morning. Normal shift, my shift. Then on the same log, same badge number. Clock in again at 11:52 p.m. Clock out, 4:17 a.m. I was already home in bed at 11:52 p.m. on October 7th. I know because my girlfriend at the time was still awake watching something on the couch when I walked in, and she remembers because I remember her telling me to be quiet going up the stairs. Denise looked at it for a second and said the thing everybody says when a computer does something they don't want to think about. It's probably a glitch. The reader duplicates sometimes when there's a power flicker. She adjusted my pay, apologized for the confusion, and that was that. Except it wasn't just that week. I asked her before I left the office if she could check the month before. She sighed, but she did it because I think she wanted me to see for myself that I was being paranoid over nothing. There were 4 other nights, not every week. Not a pattern you'd catch unless you were looking spread out, sometimes 2 weeks apart. Every one of them. My badge, clocking in a second time, sometime between 11 and 1 in the morning, and on a night I was already gone. I want to be honest about my state of mind here, because I think it matters. I didn't go home that night and lie awake, convinced something evil was wearing my ID badge. I went home irritated. I assumed somebody had cloned it. RFID cloning isn't hard. There are keychain devices you can order for $20 that'll copy a badge if someone brushes it close enough to your pocket. I figured a coworker was using a copy of my badge to fudge their own hours, or worse, to get building access after their shift for reasons I didn't want to think too hard about. I went to my shift supervisor, a guy named Marcus, and told him I wanted to see the security footage for those 4 nights, specifically the employee entrance. Marcus was the kind of supervisor who didn't want problems, which meant he was easy to convince, because pulling footage was less of a problem than me filing a formal complaint. He got the security contractor to send over 4 clips, 1 for each flagged night, centered on my badge's second clock-in time. The employee entrance camera is mounted above the turnstile, angled down, good enough resolution to read a badge. not good enough to make out fine detail on a face from more than a few feet back, especially at night with the overhead lights on their dimmed setting. In all 4 clips, someone comes through the turnstile at the timestamp on my badge log. Someone wearing the warehouse's dark blue uniform polo, same as everyone's, no name visible because the polos don't have names, just the company logo. Same general build as me, I'm not a big guy, and neither was whoever this was. I couldn't see a face in any of the 4 clips, not because the resolution was too bad. Because in every single one, at the exact moment they'd be closest to the camera, they had their head down, like they were checking their phone, or tying a shoe, or just looking at the floor every time. 4 separate nights, 4 separate camera angles from slightly different positions, because the contractor pulled from 2 different entrance cameras across the 4 incidents. And every time, the head was down at the same moment relative to the badge scan. I know how that sounds. I know the obvious read is that I'm pattern matching on nothing, 4 coincidences dressed up as one. I've told myself that. I've also timed it since I went back to that footage more than once, and the head goes down within about a second and a half of the badge reader chirping every time, like whoever it is knows exactly where that camera is and exactly when the system logs the scan. Here's the part that made me stop treating this like an IT problem. I started keeping my own log dates, not saying anything to anyone, just writing down which nights my badge had a second clock in. Once I had 5, then 6, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I pulled the incident reports for the warehouse on those same nights. We had an internal system for logging anything out of the ordinary damaged inventory, safety incidents, discrepancies in outbound shipments. Any employee could look up incident numbers, even if the details were restricted. Every single night, my badge clocked in twice. There was an incident logged for that shift. Not big things, at least not on paper. A pallet of electronics that scanned as shipped, but never left the building and was never found. A trailer that came up short by 11 cases against the manifest, with no explanation and no camera gap to account for it. A section of shelving in the far bay, the one by the compactor, that got flagged for a temperature anomaly by a sensor that nobody could explain because that bay isn't climate controlled to begin with. There's nothing to regulate. 6 for 6. Every night the second clock in happened, something in that building didn't add up by morning. I'm not going to pretend I have a theory that ties it together neatly because I don't. And I don't trust anyone who tells you that they do. What I will tell you is what I did next. Because I think it's the part you'd want to know if you were me. Every badge number at that company is tied to an employee ID, and employee IDs, when someone leaves, aren't retired, they're recycled after 90 days to save the company from buying new blocks of numbers from the badge vendor. Denise told me this without meaning to tell me anything, just making conversation while she pulled my file the second time, annoyed I was back in her office again. Yeah, we reuse them. It's an old system. Corporate never wanted to pay to update it. I asked her, since my badge number clearly wasn't unique to me in the system's memory, whether she could see who'd had that same employee ID before it was assigned to me. She could. It took her longer than I expected because the old records were in a different, older database that the newer HR software didn't talk to directly. But she found it. My badge number had belonged 3 years earlier to a night shift picker named Aaron Voss. Denise got quiet reading the file, and when I asked what was wrong, she said it wasn't anything, it was just an old employee record, and she didn't really want to get into personnel history that wasn't mine. I pushed, not hard, just enough. Aaron Voss worked the overnight shift. Same shift I did, same building, same badge number, or it's now reassigned to me. His employment ended a little under 3 years before I was hired. The file didn't say fired. It didn't say resigned either. It said in the kind of flat administrative language that companies use when they don't want to say anything at all. Employment terminated. Reason administrative separation. See incident log 3381. I asked if I could see incident log 3381. Denise told me that one was restricted, and that restricted incident logs only get released to law enforcement or under subpoena, and then she looked at me in a way that told me she already understood exactly why I was asking, and that she wished I didn't push further that day. I want to be clear about that because I think about it a lot, the version of this where I pushed, where I made her word to tell me, where I found out what happened to Aaron Voss on whatever night incident 3381 refers to. I didn't do that. I told myself it wasn't my business. I still tell myself that. I worked there for 3 more months after that conversation. I kept logging the second clock-ins. There were 2 more, same pattern, head down, incident the same night, nothing recoverable on camera. The night I want to tell you about is the one where I stayed. It was a Thursday. I'd clocked out at 6:04 a.m. like always. Badged the turnstile. Walked to my car in the lot that's always half lit because half the poles have burned out bulbs nobody's replaced. But instead of driving home, I sat in the car. I wanted to see if it happened that night. I'd started to notice the second clock-ins tended to fall on nights that were a multiple of exactly 19 days apart from the one before, which is either meaningful or the kind of number your brain invents when it's been staring at a spreadsheet too long. I don't know which. I was due either way. I sat in that lot from 6:10 in the morning until almost noon, telling myself I'd leave after 20 more minutes, over and over, the way you do. At 11:41 a.m., in full daylight with the lot mostly empty because day shift was already inside, the employee entrance door opened from the inside. Not the turnstile, the manual door beside it, the one that's only supposed to open from inside for deliveries or if someone's propping it for a smoke break, which nobody does anymore because they got a camera on it after a theft 2 years back. Dates. Someone in the dark blue uniform polo stepped out alone and walked toward the employee lot, the same lot I was sitting in, 4 rows back with the sun in my eyes and my heart doing something I didn't like. I want to tell you I saw a face. I want this story to end with a face, something I could describe to you, something that would let you feel like it was over, resolved, a person with a name and a reason. I can't give you that. What I can tell you is that they crossed the lot at a normal walking pace, unhurried, the way you walk when you've done something 10,000 times and it doesn't cost you anything anymore. And about 30 feet from the building, at the edge of where the security camera's field of view ends, I checked the coverage map afterward. That's a real dead zone. I'm not imagining that part. They simply weren't in front of me anymore. I don't mean they ran. I don't mean they ducked behind a car. I was watching the whole time and there was nowhere to go in that 30 feet that I wouldn't have seen. I mean, I looked away for the length of time it takes to blink because a truck downshifted loud on the access road behind me. And I flinched. And when I looked back, the lot in front of me was just a lot. I quit 2 weeks later. I told Marcus it was for a warehouse closer to my new apartment, which was true. I did move, though I'd already put in the application before that Thursday. He didn't ask any real questions. Denise, on my last day, didn't say much either, just told me to take care of myself, and there was something in the way she said it that made me think she'd said the same thing in the same tone to somebody else before me. I never found out what incident log 3381 said. I've thought about filing a records request more than once. I always talk myself out of it in the same way by telling myself that whatever's in that file, it's not going to change what I already know, which is that my badge number worked that job for 3 years before it belonged to me, and it's still working it now on a schedule I never learned the rule for, saying it's me. I don't work nights anymore. I sleep fine mostly. But every so often on the nights I can't, I think about a badge with my name on it, walking through a turnstile in an empty building, keeping its head down at exactly the right moment, on time, every time, for a shift I never agreed to work.